Hello there guys, Daniel Childs back here again. Hope you're doing really well on this Thursday. In today's show, we're mainly going to be focusing about the striker situation at Chelsea. Looking at the options that Enzo Maresca has, what Chelsea should be doing, the situations of several players, the links in the transfer market, and kind of asking the question, do Chelsea actually need to sign a centre forward? Especially if we factor in the players being linked rather than fantasy names that people would like us to sign this summer, which are a little bit unrealistic. Then, before we wrap up, there is a Kepa story today that's done the rounds on social media that is a little bit strange, but we'll talk about that too. Please hit that like button if you're enjoying the content. Don't want to miss any of the Chelsea content throughout pre-season, throughout the transfer window, and into the 2024-25 campaign. Got a lot to break down and assess, I'm sure, in the upcoming weeks, as we have already this week. So please go and check out the content that I've posted so far. But let's jump into it with the striker situation. So Nazar Kinsella reported on the 9th of July that Maresca is looking to assess his striker options, obviously now in pre-season training. Nicholas Jackson, Christopher Nkunku, and the new signing, Mark Gu, who we will get back to, is already on the books. Apparently their performance and fitness levels in pre-season will dictate whether Chelsea push to sign another striker. It's then mentioned here, Atletico Madrid striker Samu Amorodian was subject to an initial bid from Chelsea, and apparently senior staff have asked Lille forward Jonathan David's reps for information ahead of a potential move. So quite a bit there, a lot of names not even mentioned by Nazar Kinsella. So you've got Nicholas Jackson, you've got Christopher Nkunku, you've got Gui from, of course, Barcelona, who we've just signed. But then on top of that, you have David Dacha Fofana, who's been pictured in training this week. One that's quite easy to forget because he was bought in the first kind of Winstanley Stewart transfer window in January 2023. We bought him in. He barely played for half a season, barely got any minutes, and then we sent him out on loan to Union Berlin last year. It didn't work out. Halfway through the season, he moves to Burnley. All right, Burnley still get relegated, but he scored a couple of goals, and there was at least a run of form, I think before April, just shortly after he signed, where actually those numbers were looking pretty promising. So Fofana is one of those names I really do want to see given a chance at Chelsea this summer. I just feel that, I'm not saying he's going to turn out to be a wonder kid. I'm not turning around and saying he's going to be our saviour, but I think in terms of sharing goals around and at least just maybe saving yourself money in terms of having to go out there and spend in the market, I think is not a ridiculous thing to suggest, especially if Maresca is serious, if the club is serious, are just assessing their striker options. Because when you then move on to the sort of players that Chelsea are looking at, again, not many what I would deem needle movers, and there is quite a substantial profile difference in Samu Amorodian and Jonathan David. I mean, you are talking about different types of players. It's not that I'm against buying a plan B, plan C striker option. I think it's good to maybe have some variety. But if you are also focusing on the coach you just employed, I think that's going to be quite relevant to kind of match up with the style of play. But Amorodian is obviously very raw. He did have a decent loan spell in La Liga last year away from Atletico, but is a very raw player. Do you want to bring him in along with other raw players? Because how many can you actually have in one squad? I think is a broader question here for Chelsea. It's all right saying, well, we've done it before with Nicholas Jackson. We've done it before with other players. But these players also need to play minutes. So I think that's a big question, especially when you have just bought one from Barcelona. And Liam Toomey wrote this piece for The Athletic. Chelsea's Mark Gu transfer is a no-lose situation, but can they make it win? Says here that we were hoping that Maresca does not view Christopher Nkunku as a number 9, but Chelsea also have Fofana fresh from a productive loan spell at Burnley. And of course, another teenage project, we forget to mention David Washington, who impressed for the development squad in 23-24. There are also Cobham Academy products such as Donnell McNeely and Duran Richards, both the same age as Gu, who need space to spread their wings in senior professional football. And it's kind of looking at, given how little Chelsea spent on him, it's going to be very hard for him to, not make a profit for Chelsea at this point, because at that fee in this current game, if he goes on loan to kind of anyone and has a decent season, you're kind of guaranteed to make a profit. I mean, something has to go really, really, I know Chelsea are not beyond this, but something really has to go drastically wrong for Chelsea to not at least make like 10 or 15 million from this guy. Hopefully a lot more, and hopefully we're not even talking about pure profit. We're talking about a player who comes in and actually impacts the first team, which is what we care about. But back to who Chelsea could sign. One of the names that has gone really quiet is obviously Duran. That was a big name being targeted at the start of this window. And it kind of felt like that was almost an inevitability because it had been linked in January. But then I think it's a combination of things because he was kind of tied up in the PSR situation, wasn't he? And then that didn't happen because you sort of felt it was going to be a kind of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours with PSR, which is kind of a lot of the way it was last month. But instead, we signed a Murray Kellyman. Aston Villa got Ian Maatson. Not a great trade-off, to be honest. I think Duran would have been a better player for us to bring in. And there was reports around Matt Law and others that Chelsea were maybe a little bit concerned about the character of Duran. And my only assumption at this point is either Chelsea have been turned off by a potential fee for him or that character assessment has not come back positively. I felt that as someone who's already played Premier League football, I think does look like a bit of a chaos merchant. And I don't think that's a bad thing. As people who know me and the sort of strikers I like, I don't think that would have been a bad thing. But maybe as well, the price and the character, that just means that the deal isn't going to happen. So you've got that. You've got Amando Berra, another name that's easy to forget. I mean, I think Breuer's in a bit of a limbo state at the moment because we all kind of expect him to move on from Chelsea. But that move hasn't materialised. So there are so many names in here. It's interesting. I went on Twitter and I asked some people for responses. Some people said, we're talking about Ivan Toney as a potential name because that has been linked as well quite recently. I still think that's a little bit far-fetched given the finances that would be involved. Still dreamy kind of things about Victor Osimhen and Napoli maybe lowering their asking price, but there are concerns over Osimhen specifically, not only price, but injury issues as well that he's had that I don't think makes the major fee you'd probably still need to get him out of Napoli worth it. So then you're left in this position where is it malpractice to not do anything? But then also, would it be stupid to just overlook the options you have? Because the reality is, and Tifo have done a really good video quite recently about Nicholas Jackson. And it's great to see. It's great to see outside the Chelsea fan base that there are talks about Jackson and how good of a season he had. And there is hope that Jackson can go above and beyond and actually go to another level. And do you really want to scupper that potential development on a player who very well, if he keeps on performing and keeps on getting better with his numbers, it won't take him long to get to the sort of level that Benjamin Sesko is currently at, where he's being prized at like 60, 70 million. Other names too. And you kind of wonder, is it just better to be patient with Nicholas Jackson? Again, that doesn't mean that you aren't looking at backups, you aren't looking at plan Bs, but then you potentially already have that in players like Dacho Fofana, in a player you've just invested in from Barcelona, a youth product like Gu. It gets me back to a point that I have been with several areas of Chelsea's squad this summer that makes me think, because it's just so cluttered and the names being linked for me are kind of where we were last year. You kind of are buying Jackson 12 months ago, in my opinion, unless you really are uncovering another Cole Palmer. The likelihood is you're buying someone that's going to take 12 months to get to where Jackson is, potentially in a best case scenario. And those players then need substantial minutes to get there. And will they actually get that, even with the amount of football Chelsea have? So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, because I don't think it's as clear cut. It's not that, if money was no object and we could all sit here and go, let's buy a striker, let's buy Isaac, some people are really, really hot on Osimhen, but also, Ivan Toney, I think, is a very good Premier League striker. If this was an older version of Chelsea who would go out and buy in the market like that, I think, yeah, absolutely, you could buy a very serious centre forward. That isn't always a guarantee, as we know with Romelu Lukaku and other players in Chelsea recent history. So I said this at the start of the window. I'll keep saying this now. I think if you could sign a Duran, this is before, of course, the business that's been done already, but I don't think that would have been an awful signing, given the fee wasn't exactly insane. So that could be one that still is being looked across for the summer. And I just think, again, look at what you have, make an assessment, and then does it need to be upgraded? And if you can upgrade, let's try and be as serious about it as possible, rather than signing someone who's just going to be a bit of a squad filler, doesn't really move the needle, doesn't really improve on what we have, or the players that you then send out on loan that you could have kept. I could see a situation where Chelsea sign Amarodian, for instance. We send David Dacho Fofana out on loan again, And it gets to a point where it's like, well, we just could have kept him. It does, it does the benefit, the cost, benefit analysis for me is it's not that clear cut. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. Am I being silly by saying Chelsea should just, sit still, look at their options, see how Jackson and Kunku and other players do throughout pre-season? Are you really thinking we cannot have another summer going through where we barely sign a serious striker? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Before we wrap up, this story came out in terms of Kepa Arrizabalaga. This is from Alan Stand-Upper, and I know it looks like a random Twitter account here, and to be fair, I could see why some people think it just is, but it is someone who reported about the Neil Bath and Jim Fraser situation that was then backed up by others. So I would say there is some credibility here, and to just come out of this is a bit random. Kepa is training with the development squad, not the first team. So the Kepa situation is I think quite clear cut in terms of what should be happening this summer. He should not have a future at Chelsea. He's not good enough for Chelsea. If you can sell him, great. I know obviously his contract is coming down, I believe now to its final year, 7-year contract, wasn't it, in 2018? But coming towards the end of Kepa, and the club will clearly want to make some sort of money on him. There's been consistent rumours out of Spain that apparently a loan back to Madrid is still not out of the question, which I find a bit hilarious, to be honest. I mean, I still don't know how he managed to get himself at Real Madrid last year. I guess the irony of that and kind of the demonstration of his lack of quality was that he was brought in to kind of back up Thibaut Courtois, but soon found himself as third choice by the end of the season. So Kepa should not be brought back in, and I think it's made a clear stance. Training with the development squad, I kind of think you may be asking for some discontent in and around the first team. I mean, there's still going to be players, I know not many, who know Kepa, or just at least look at the situation. I think it's a little bit toxic, I have to admit, and even though I do firmly believe that Kepa should be on his way out, and I don't know why you can't make that stance, but then also get him to train with the first team at least for a couple of days. I mean, there are going to be players there currently who will eventually move on. So I'm not entirely sure about it, whether it just, it seems a little bit cruel. I mean, some people may not care at all and just be done with Kepa. I mean, I'm done with Kepa in terms of I don't think he should have a career at Chelsea beyond this year, and it's the right time to move him on. But it feels a little bit strange and potentially creates drama when there doesn't really need to be one. His situation is settled. Let's see if anything comes of it. But I found it a little bit strange, and I'm sure some people will chuckle about it. Let me know your opinions. Do you think it's a little bit harsh that Kepa is training with a development squad? Do you think it's too harsh a signal when he's going to probably be off anyway? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But that is it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch or listen to it. Follow me across socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.